Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we're going to jump back into economics. We completed section 1 of the syllabus in the 3 previous videos, and so now we are going to jump into section 2, production, economic resources, and resource allocation. So the economics for Csec from Gopi, that's the one we're using. So if you have that, you can pull up and follow along, and so you can on your own be able to go back and study what was covered in this video. Alright, so we're going to just jump right in, and the first thing we're going to look at, we are going to go in order of the book, the textbook. The syllabus would have had some of these things in a different order. For example, objective 1 in the syllabus is to define production and differentiate between production and productivity, but in the textbook they start off with the factors of production, and so that is where we are going to start, and by the end everything should converge and everything should become one. So we're going to start off with the factors of production. Alright, so the factors of production, there are 4 factors of production, 4 main factors of production, and they are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, or your entrepreneurial skills. So you have your land, your labor, your capital, and entrepreneurship, or in some books you might see management as the 4th factor of production. So you have land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Those are the 4 factors of production. And what are the factors of production? The factors of production are the economic resources that are used to produce goods and services. And like I said before, there are 4 factors of production. They are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial talent. So those are the 4 factors of production. So we're going to try and look at them individually now. So like we said, 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So let's define the first one, land. What is land exactly? And land can be defined as all the factors, services available naturally, whether on, above, or beneath the earth's surface. It is made up of all the free gifts of nature. So what they're saying here is that land is all of those things that are above and below the surface of the earth that occurs naturally. They are the natural gifts from God, from nature. So things like homes and buildings and those things are not going to be considered as land. Land is all the natural resources that are given to us by nature, by God, that are used in production. So you have things like the seas, the rivers. So you use the seas and the rivers for fishing, of course. You have certain natural occurrences like natural gas. You have things like gold and silver, those things that you mine, you pull from the earth's crust. So all those come under land. So you have examples again. We have things like bauxite, petroleum, all those things they extract from the earth. Land itself on the earth's surface that can be used to grow crops. So the physical land itself they used to grow crops, or you used to actually construct the premises of the business. That is land. So like we said before, land does not include the actual building that you put on. The actual premises is not land, but what you put the premises on, that is land. So all these are examples of land as a factor of production. So you have the natural God-given gifts such as the sea, the ocean, rivers, ponds, your gold mine, the silver mine, your bauxite mines, the actual land that you use to engage in agricultural production. All those are the factors of production that entails land. So that's what land is as a factor of production. Now there are certain characteristics that land has that makes it somewhat different than the other factors of production, such as land is fixed in supply, meaning you cannot really increase the amount of land that exists on the earth. It's a fixed supply. So the amount of the factor that land on the planet earth is fixed. We can never acquire more in that sense. You cannot increase the amount of land on the earth. However, man's ability to tap the resource land could increase as it acquires more capital and other resources. For example, the purchase of an additional boat will allow a company to go and fish for more products. So that's one way in which they can further tap into the resource that already exists as land. A next characteristic of land is land has no cost of production. Land has no cost of production. See what they say here? Land has no cost of production. You or I might have to pay for a plot of land on which to build a house. Extracting minerals from the earth requires a large amount of other factors of production. For example, extracting oil from the earth requires a large amount of capital. Preparing a plot of land for agriculture requires clearing and plowing the land. However, it is never cost society as a whole anything to produce the land itself. So the land itself doesn't really have a cost of production. What has a cost is all the things you use to extract the important aspects of the land. So land by itself, there's no cost, but to farm the land you have to buy your inputs, you have to buy your seeds, buy your fertilizer, buy your heavy equipment to be able to extract, to plant your crops and then extract them later from the land. But the land by itself has no cost of production. The land by itself, so the land out there by itself, there's no cost. But to fully tap into it now, you need to purchase certain equipment, certain resources, so that you can tap into what the land has to offer. So that's the way the land, and as you can see here, the book shows you people using equipment to pull from the land. So land need the labor to reach its full potential, land need equipment, you need resources to fully utilize the potential of the land. But the land has no cost. That's the next characteristic of land. Now a third one, mobility. You cannot really move land. Land is immobile. Land is geographically immobile. You cannot take up a piece of land from here and take it somewhere else. You cannot move an island from one place in the Caribbean to the next. It is immobile. You cannot move land just like that. So what the book says here, mobility is the ease with which a factor of production can move from one place to another. Geographic mobility. But as you can see, land itself cannot be moved from one area to the next. So that's one other factor, one other characteristic of land as a factor of production. It is geographically immobile. Alright, you cannot move land from one place to the next. So that's basically it for the factor of production, land. So let's look at the factor of production, labor now. Now, how do we define labor? Labor is the physical and mental effort of man in the production process. So labor is the physical and mental effort of man in the production process. So when we talk about man here, we're not talking about males only, okay? So let's not get all feminist and stuff. We're talking about human beings in general. Alright, so labor is the physical and the mental effort of man in the production process. And here they say physical and mental. So that means that labor is not just using your hands only. That's not just labor. So it's not just the farmer in the field plowing. It's not just the contractor on the roof using a hammer. No. Labor also includes the mental effort. For example, doctors. Doctors use their knowledge, mental effort in order to, diagnose patients and stuff like that. Teachers use their mental capacity, their mental effort in order to teach their students. Sometimes, in some cases, the mental effort can be more exhausting than the physical effort because, it takes a lot to be focused and to be disciplined and to be able to, keep on point. So sometimes the mental effort can be more stressful than the physical effort, but nonetheless, labor can be defined as the physical and the mental effort of man, or of human beings, in the production process. That's the definition of labor right here. Labor is the physical and mental effort of man in the production process. As simple as that. Now let's look at labor a little bit more in depth. Alright, so the labor supply refers to those people who are available for work in the economy. So the labor supply are all those persons who are physically and capable of working. So children and those who are otherwise challenged are not considered part of the labor supply because they might be willing but not able to work. So the labor supply are those persons of age who are willing and able to work in an economy. So let's look at some of the characteristics of labor. Labor has the following characteristics. Labor is the human factor. We stated that already. So the definition is that labor is the physical and mental effort of humans in the production process. So labor is the human factor. Labor services are provided by human beings, by man. So labor services are provided by man. That's one characteristic of labor right there. And next one, only the worker himself can sell his labor. In the case of skilled labor, no one else can perform his service. So only the worker himself can sell his labor services. So slavery is a thing of the past. You cannot force anybody to work against their will. This is not slavery. Only you, the person, him or herself, can sell your services. You cannot be forced into doing the work that you don't want to do. Next characteristic of labor. Labor services cannot be stored in the same way as units of land or capital. So of course you cannot really store labor services because labor is of course mental and physical. So you cannot really say, okay, I'm going to exert this effort today and put it up for tomorrow. You can't do that. So labor cannot be stored like other factors of production. And of course labor is geographically and occupationally more mobile than land. Of course, humans, we can always jump on a boat, jump on a plane, and go to a next island to go and work. I mean, that's the whole idea of CSME, the movement of labor, the free movement of labor, of people. So you can move from one island in the Caribbean to the next to find a job. So of course, labor is more mobile than other factors of production. Of course, this is more mobile because some jobs only occur in certain areas. So of course, you cannot move from one place to the next to do that particular job. For example, in the Caribbean, only a few Caribbean countries engage in the petrochemical industry. So you cannot really move from an oasis country, go to an oasis country to work in the petrochemicals like that per se. Alright, so a next characteristic of labor is that labor is not homogeneous, meaning it is not uniform. Homogeneous means same. So homo means the same, so labor is not homogeneous. Each unit of labor has a different skill and ability. So that goes without saying, all of us are not the same. All of us are not going to perform the same task the same way. You might have slight variations because we have different ideas, different way of doing things. So labor is not homogeneous. How I do something might not be the same way that someone else does something. So labor is not the same across the board. It is not homogeneous. It is different. Labor has different skills and different abilities. So those are the major characteristics of labor as a factor of production. And of course, we know that in today's economies, a lot of the jobs that are done by laborers are being replaced by machines. A lot of automation and mechanization is going on into the modern times. In certain factory industry, you have people are being replaced by, like for example, the car making system, where back in the day you had a whole assembly line, but today they're all replaced by robots. A lot of production occurs today with the use of more capital intensive nature, where laborers are being pushed out in favor of mechanization. But nevertheless, there are some jobs that robots just cannot do, and so there's no need to be worried about being pushed out by machinery. You just have to improve your skills in a way that cannot be replaced or replicated by machines and robots. So division of labor. What is division of labor? As the name suggests, in many factories there is a division of labor. This is where production processes are divided into a series of separate tasks. And we said that earlier, in a lot of car making systems, you have what you call the assembly line. And not even just cars. Even in manufacturing clothing, you have an assembly line system where the making of, let's say, a shirt is divided into maybe the collar. Somebody stitch the collar, somebody stitch the sleeves, somebody, you know, stitch the broad part of the shirt. You know, so division of labor is where you break down a specific task into different parts, different functions. Like I said, in assembling cars, somebody gonna assemble the door, somebody gonna assemble the bumper, somebody gonna assemble the wheels, somebody gonna assemble the windshield, and those kind of things. That's how it was back in the day. It still might be like that in certain luxury car markets where everything is handmade. But division of labor is where you break down a task into different parts and set the laborers to work. Now what this gives rise to is what we call specialization. Workers specialize in a particular task. Specialization occurs when workers focus on specific tasks and become skilled in that area. So specialization is where you are assigned a task and you do it so many times that you become skilled in that area. Now this can lead to what you call, you know, boredom. So it has a plus where you can become more efficient at doing a certain task because you do it so many times that all of a sudden you discover ways to, you know, shortcut here, shortcut there, a more efficient way to do certain things because you're an expert at this task. But this also causes you to become bored, and you know, if you become bored, you don't enjoy your job as much and you don't give your all anymore. So this is one downside of the division of labor and specialization, where you become bored at the task. But yeah, so other ways in which labor can be, some other examples would be things like, let's say you're working in a bakery, somebody might knead the bread, somebody might man the stove, man the oven and stuff like that. So there are different industries where the task can be divided and someone specializes in that task, and so you have what you call division of labor, which can give rise to specialization. So that is what those two terms are talking about. So in the syllabus, you're going to see under labor, you're going to see division of labor and specialization. So that's what that speaks to, where a task can be divided and different individuals can be put to do those tasks and become specialized at those tasks. So let's look at the supply of labor now. The supply of labor, what affects the supply of labor? Like I said before, the labor force are those people who are willing and able to work in an economy. You're of age, whatever the legal age is, and you are able and willing to work, you become a part of the labor force or the labor supply. The supply of labor can be affected by certain things. Some of them are, you know, commonsensical. You can see it. For example, the first one, the size of the population. Of course, the size of the population affects the supply of labor. The greater the population, the more of a basket you have to pull from, the more of a pool you have to pull from. For example, India and China, those are the two highest populated countries in the world. China has some 1.3 billion and India has some 1.2 billion people. So those areas are known for their population size and are known for having, well, sad to say, but cheap labor, because their main resource is labor. Because that's what you realize, a lot of things are made in China and India because those places have cheap labor and they have a lot of it. So therefore the cost of making something can go down because you have a lot of people and they are cheap in terms of their costs. So you just throw labor at anything, You would see this occurring in the Caribbean, where a lot of Chinese are now in the Caribbean, and when time comes to build a building or build, you know, on campus, you build the dormitories and stuff like that, you just see a lot of Chinese people working, and then knock up the building in less than, you know, a year. A big building gone in less than a year because they throw labor at it. A lot of men working for almost around the clock for a small pay. So the size of the population determines the labor supply. The larger the population, the larger the supply of labor, and also the reverse is true. For example, in the Caribbean, a lot of us are small nations. For example, I think one of the smallest nations in the Caribbean would be St. Kitts, where they have like 50,000 people. That's the population, and of course that's not the labor force because the 50,000 includes both children and adults. So you could imagine the labor supply would be so much smaller. In Jamaica you have 2 million, about 2 million persons in Jamaica. Trinidad 1.2, 1.3 million persons. So Jamaica is closer to 3 million. So of course the population means that the labor force would be larger than some of the smaller Caribbean countries in the OECS. So the smaller population mean smaller labor supply. Larger populations mean a larger labor supply. So population size definitely affects the supply of labor. Then you have the proportion of the population willing to work. As we said, the labor force are those who are willing and able to work, because there's some people who are of age, strong, can work, but might be disabled, or some of them are just what you call shiftless persons. I don't want to use that word, but there's some persons who don't care about work. You see them bumming on the street, young, able-bodied men just on the street, just lying in, just chilling, don't care, begging money. So those are not included in the labor supply per se, the labor force per se, because they already excluded themselves from the labor force. So we are going to look at this more in depth as we go further in economics, and we're looking at unemployment. But for now, just know that the proportion of people who are willing and able to work also affects the supply of labor. And the last one, the number of workers the number of hours worked by each individual can affect the supply of labor. Overtime increases the supply of labor. Of course, people normally work 8 hours per day, but if you're willing to work overtime, then that would increase the supply of labor. You have access to more labor for more time, so that increases the supply of labor. So that, in a nutshell, is the factor of production, labor. We are going to stay there for now, but in the next video we are going to look at the remaining factors of production. We're going to look at capital and entrepreneurship, and we are also going to cover the rewards for the various factors of production. So of course, what you have to do now is stay tuned. You have to subscribe, you have to like, you also have to click the notification bell so that you know when I drop part 2 of the factors of production video. So do just that, and I'll see you on the next one here and Learn SKN.